Hi, everybody. I just wanted to open with a verse which, to me, just is really important to keep on our hearts. So this is from the Gospel according to John, chapter 9, verses 1 to 3. As he went along, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" "Neither this man nor his parents sinned," said Jesus, "but this happened so that the works of God might be displayed in him." When we look at so many parts of Old Testament scripture, we might see infertility as a curse, right? And we hear that, and as Christians, when we face that, how does that register with us? And we have to remember, right, we live in a time with resurrection power, right? That curse has been lifted, and the word that we hear in John is a good word, right? It's not about a sin, no matter what a person's story was, no matter what came before, right? We have forgiveness and we have new life in Jesus, and this is what we need to rest in with peace. Being here, I feel just so grateful for the generosity of the 1212 community and for the vulnerability to allow me to be here, right? This is a sacred space. This is a space for women who've walked through or are walking through a specific journey. And I know that journey is not my journey. And I'm just humbly here and thankful to be here. I'd like to share some things that I have learned along the way, both in my research, when I was doing research in my academic career, as well as things that I've seen from folks who've come in for clinical care that hopefully can be a word of encouragement and a word of maybe some direction for where one can go. So when I was doing research in my kind of prior career in academics, I went around the country and I interviewed with clergy from various faith traditions, and a lot of those were from a similar tradition that I sat in Protestantism, and other denominations and other religious traditions altogether. Went to California, Texas. I was living in New England at the time, Washington, D.C., and just met with folks and just said, "Hey, how do you engage with congregants about this? Do you invite that dialogue? When do people come to you to talk about their struggle with fertility and with pregnancy loss?" And just gathered what I could to understand, because there are so many ways, it seemed to me, that churches can be really just great support and great encouragement, and kind of an opportunity for sisterhood for people who are going through a journey like this. But also there are places where there is shame. There are places where there is the unspoken. There's places where just culturally, right, you're not quite like everyone else of your same age if you don't have kids who are going off to the children's ministry. So what can that look like, and how can that be healthy instead of at all kind of isolating? And some of the kind of the three most salient points that I'd like to share when people did engage with a religious leader were, well, most often when people would come, they'd say, "Well, what can I do?" And I think that the healthiest place when the religious leaders would kind of reply would just be, "Hey, I'm here to listen, right? I'm here to walk through this with you and not to give you a plan, because that plan oftentimes is between you and the Lord." So kind of point number one, right? Point number one is seek the Lord in these things, right? Go in prayer and go humbly as best you can in that. You might hear a word from people who are telling you very directively, "Well, you should do this or you shouldn't do that," right? But the answer that I would hope that every person who's walking with the Lord can really say is, "Hey, have you sought the Lord on this? And does this feel like this is what you have been called to do?" And that might look very differently for every individual, and that should be respected, right? So if one hears a question right, of the path that you've chosen, and someone's challenging you in that, right, if you can say, I've spent a lot of time in prayer on this, and I'm continuing to pray on this, but this is the word that I'm hearing, and I feel that this is a God-given word. And if one truly feels that, then that's a place that we can find peace and comfort, no matter what that word is around us. A second thing which I think is important is the challenge back that the clergy would give to folks who come to them to talk about this is, have you considered your heart posture on this? Right? There are places where it's very easy in America, in the church, for family and for children to become an idol, right? And how do we guard ourselves against that? Having a child may be a very God-given desire that's on our heart, but it can get elevated to a place of idolatry, right? So what is it that we seek? And at the end of the day, we need to go back to that, right? We need to go back to, number one is, God, what do you have for me, right? I was struck by just the words that were being sung during the worship. Just, Lord, what, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the exact word I should have written down, but I was just moved by it in the moment. But, I want your will to be done. Do we really, right? At times it feels like we do, but we we want his will to be done as long as it matches our will, right? So evaluate that heart position. In the same vein, right, the idea of, are we willing to be a co-creator, if you will, or are we actually trying to be the creator, right? We need not, we make ourselves small that he may be big, but we can co-create, right? He calls for us to. We're not supposed to be passive. We're supposed to be people who are of intent. But at the same time, let not our desire to create go above his. So if one chooses a journey that looks like fertility treatments, right? How do we make sure that if we go that route, we're not then taking that too far, right? Well, since I'm already going there, I can pick boy or girl right now. There's new technologies that maybe I can pick one that's going to be less likely to have heart disease or schizophrenia down the road. Well, is that really what we're called to do, or do we leave an aspect of that to God, right? To co-create, but not to seek to supplant his role in that, even if a path is going forward with treatments that are here. And in that same vein about heart posture, are you seeking input? If you go to receive counseling on this from a member of your church or from, a wise Christian that you respect, right? Or are you really looking for validation of what you want, right? There are times that we do that, right? We kind of want someone just to say, yeah, what you're doing is okay, because maybe we don't feel certain, right? And I think that gets back to that first point of seeking the Lord, because if we can feel a measure of certainty that this is his intent for us, and we can be confident in that, well, that's far more important than, well, I kind of want this, and maybe it's okay if I tell myself this, but if my pastor says it's okay, then I'm good, right? Is that the heart posture, or is it really, no, I'm inviting that input? And it doesn't mean you have to take someone else's final opinion as your final opinion, but can you invite that in a dialogue, or are you looking for just validation of your own desire? And then the third point that kind of came out through that is, how do we consider a journey towards parenthood as our desire in light of that vertical relationship that we have with the Lord? How do we consider it in light of the horizontal relationship that we have, which is primary and ought to be primary within our family, even if we are one day blessed with a child, and that's with your spouse? And are there places that this is supplanting a desire to draw near to the Lord, that maybe in this we're feeling that sense of rejection that's natural, right? And we're pulling away from the Lord? Or does that call us into a greater steadfast prayer? Lord, show me your will. Lord, give me a sense of where your heart is, and let your heart be my heart, right? Like the first song tonight, right? Like you're closer than my skin, right? How close we can get. And when there is that intimacy with our Lord and Creator, well, then there is a strengthening rather than a pulling away. So how can we walk towards that? Because that is what we're often called to do, even in kind of the research space, right? Not just kind of talking in terms of maybe what one would guess, but even in the research space, there's good data that suggests that women who seek and obtain clergy counseling around their fertility journey, they show evidence of what's called post-traumatic growth. Right at the end of it, they are most often in a healthier place in terms of their own mental and spiritual well-being than when they started, right? Because they have walked intentionally towards instead of away. And the same in that horizontal relationship. Is this journey strengthening the couple and drawing them together, right? Just talking to some women tonight, just hearing about how this journey can go the other way and it can drive away, right? And we can instead benefit so greatly if through a journey like this, we are sharing, we're communicating better with our spouse, and we're drawing together and nearer. And this, I think, is where we can take this journey, which is so painful, right? And it touches on so many aspects of identity and sorrow and loss and all the things that feel so broken about this world that we live in, right? But at the same time, we can allow God to do a great work through that, no matter where the story ends in terms of parenting. I'm glad to talk more on other aspects later, but I don't want to take up too much time for now. So thanks, everybody. Thanks for letting me be here.